It has been almost 24 hours since Celtic got eliminated in the Champions League by Bayern Munich, but it might take at least 24 days for the Celtic players to get over that cruel last-minute lucky goal. Let's call it what it was. It was a lucky goal from Alphonso Davies. But now we're going to look at the reaction and see what McGregor said. We're going to see what Schmeichel said. And more importantly, we're going to see what Brendan Rodgers had to say about Celtic getting knocked out. And more importantly, how far the team has come and their Champions League journey in general. Welcome back, guys, to Fog Football. We do have the Celtic reaction here. But before we get into that, had a few people call me out on the match review and in the player ratings, and I guess you can't please everyone, and I'm not aiming to please anyone, to be honest. If you want to be happy or unhappy, that's entirely up to you, but some people thought I was putting down Celtic in this campaign, and all I've done is praise Celtic this campaign. Did I maybe make a bit of fun of the Dortmund result? Yes, but and did I think the Dortmund result was worse than the Lyon result? I did. That Rangers got, I did. And people shat their pants over that. I thought 7-1 was a shocking result. But other than that, I've gave Celtic a lot of praise. And I've gave them a lot of praise over these two games against Bayern Munich. But some people aren't happy with two things that I said. First thing being, I felt like towards the end of the game, for the past, last 20 minutes or whatnot, Bayern were all over Celtic. And it did look like it was only a matter of time until Bayern scored. Some people have an issue with that. I think if you're watching the game and you're being fair, you will realise that Celtic were hanging on. Now, yeah, albeit all they needed to do was hang on for less than one more minute. 45 seconds more, and they would have got into extra time. And they deserved to get into extra time. But they didn't. And I thought you could see the goal coming. So there's that. I think Celtic deserved to get to extra time. But I do think the Bayern goal was coming with the amount of chances and the amount of pressure that Bayern was putting on Celtic. Similar to how Celtic was putting a shitload of pressure on Bayern last week. And I think Celtic could have scored more than one goal last week. Just like I think that Bayern Munich showed that they had a goal in them last night. So some people are not happy with that. Some people don't like the analysts that I believe that the goal was coming. Don't know what to tell you. Don't know how to please you. Don't really care. And second of all, I said that I think that one of the reasons why Celtic lost this game, and it's through no fault of their own or Brendan Rodgers, but I just think when you look at the bench, you look at the quality, or should I say the lack of quality that they've got on the bench. You've got Bayern Munich. They can afford to make 5 substitutes last night, and they're not really weakened. Hell, they brought on Thomas Müller, for God's sake, with 10 seconds of football left to be played. What a substitute that is. You look at Celtic's bench last night, and out of the players that didn't come on, I think the only players that you would want to bring on would be Luke McCowan and possibly Greg Taylor. Other than that, there's nobody remaining on that Celtic bench that I think you would want to bring on for this calibre of game in the Champions League against Bayern. And I did say that if Bernardo was, they had a couple of 5, 6, 7 million pound players on the bench, like a Bernardo, who I believe can go for that amount easily, and a Kyogo that they sold in January. Those two players could have been the difference. Now, Celtic can't help that Bernardo's injured and, Kyogo wanted to leave. But the fact remains, I think if Celtic had a couple of players that they could have brought on last night to freshen things up, I believe that Rodgers would have made the changes. You look at the changes that Rodgers made. He brought on Ida and he brought on Yang. But both of them were forced. Jota couldn't go anymore. Jota's energy was done. His gas tank was finished. And Kuhn picked up an injury. Rodgers was forced into making those changes. You can't tell me that having Kyogo and, let's say, Bernardo, if he was fit and ready to play, you can't tell me that could not have made a difference. That could have been the difference between Celtic maybe going on and getting a second goal, maybe winning the tie in normal time. So, yeah, that's what I said, and I stand by that because, it's obvious that having Kyogo and Bernardo or, another player of Bernardo's quality on the bench would make the difference in these ties. I just look at that Celtic bench, and a lot of those players you would not want to bring on against Bayern Munich. And I think that Rodgers proved that, because you got to the 94th minute and the only 2 subs he made was subs he had to make, subs he was forced into making. So that backs up my point that the bench for Celtic, yes, domestically, they can dominate everyone. We know they're the best in Scotland, but I think when you look at their bench in the Champions League, when they need to freshen things up, when they need to make changes late in a game, I don't think they have the bench to do that because it would weaken the side drastically. And some people think that's me taking a dig. It's just my honest opinion. I mean, if you don't like it, go fuck yourself. I don't know what to tell you. Anyway, to the guys that are actually fair out there, let's see what the Celtic players had to say. So first up, we've got Callum McGregor, who called it one of the cruelest results in a Celtic jersey. And I felt bad for McGregor last night. It looked like he was crying, or he had been crying before the interview. Either that, or he looked like he wanted to burst into tears because, I mean, he just looked really like teary-eyed. And, I mean, you can't blame him. This would have been Celtic's best result in Europe, probably, when you factor in that they haven't won a Champions League knockout tie ever. Now, some people will say 67, but you tend to forget about history. That's a long time ago. You know, we're in the new era now. I think that if Celtic won that game, that probably would have went down as the best result in Celtic history, and McGregor would have been the captain. Look, he's a Celtic legend, and he's going to be remembered as a Celtic legend no matter what happens. I mean, McGregor could play shite for the next 2 seasons and then retire suddenly, and he's still a legend, you know. But had he captained Celtic to that win last night, I think that changes the history of Callum McGregor. I mean, he's viewed from possibly just being a Celtic legend to maybe one of the all-time GOATs. So, I mean, maybe from a personal standpoint, he was upset as well. But, you know, from a team standpoint as well, I'm sure he's got it. They didn't even get the chance. You know, it looked like they had 30 minutes ahead of them and possibly a penalty shootout and then that cruel goal, which was lucky. I mean, it was lucky. People are saying you got to give Alphonso Davies credit for reading what Carter Vickers was going to do. And I mean, maybe you do give him credit, but that still doesn't change the fact that it's extremely unlucky that Celtic have made the save with Schmeichel, and then it's effectively a clearance that is bounced off Davies and you know, sneaked into the back of the net. It's a terrible goal to lose. But anyway, let's see what Callum McGregor had to say. He said, quote, "Probably one of the cruelest results in a Celtic jersey. The performances of the players, they gave about everything and pushed a really good Bayern side all of the way. Sometimes football's cruel. You just don't get what you deserve. But I have to say I'm so proud of the players and the way they played and handled themselves. We come off that pitch with no regrets. It's a real sore win, but I think we can be proud of ourselves. It was set up for us to try and nick the next one as well. Even if we had to go to extra time, we fancied ourselves as well. I think anybody watching that game of football tonight would see a really good Celtic team." End of quote. And you know what? I do agree with Cal McGregor because I think when the game started, I mean, you're listening to the commentary on Amazon Prime. You had Alan Shearer, and I can't remember who else was there, but you had Alan Shearer, and like they, at the beginning they weren't giving Celtic any credit because they don't give Scottish football any credit. They just assume that Celtic aren't a good team because they're in Scottish football, and that's not the case. Celtic are a very good team. That's why they dominate Scottish football. But the English media, they've always had this like anti-agenda when it comes to clubs from Scotland. They always run down Scottish football. They always treat Scottish football like it's some sort of minnow league, and they make out like that these are. I mean, these are clubs that are garbage and wouldn't be able to survive in England. I mean, that's laughable. This current Celtic team, I think, would be more than good enough to survive in the English Premiership. And I think after a couple of seasons with the money, they'd be right up there challenging around the top 4. There's no doubt about that. I mean, you look at a lot of the clubs in Scotland, if they moved to, I mean, some massive clubs in Scotland, if they moved to England, they'd be a lot bigger. But just in general, you know, they don't get credit. And I get it. I mean, some clubs in Scotland, right, haven't performed in Europe, my club being one of them. But, I mean, you look at Rangers a few years ago, got to Europa League final. I mean, Aberdeen 2 seasons ago had that, you know, really good run in the group stage. I know they didn't go through, but they were robbed. I remember that game against the Greek team. They were absolutely robbed in that. Aberdeen should have been into the next round. And they did beat Frankfurt 2-1, which, you know, were a very good team. They just won the Europa League against Rangers like the previous season. So look, we do see some really good performances and results for Scottish teams, but we just never get it. And I felt like the longer the game went on, you got like Alan Shearer, and it was almost like he was shocked. He didn't believe that Celtic could play this good against Bayern Munich. You know, it's ignorance at the end of the day from those guys. I mean, how all the time we see Scottish, well, not all the time because there has been some heavy defeats, but we have seen Scottish teams play English teams and give them really good games. Celtic Aston Villa, it was a pretty close game. Rangers Man United, I thought was a pretty close game. Rangers Tottenham, they got a draw. Probably should have won that game. You look at previous seasons, you've seen Celtic that time they drew twice with Manchester City in the group stage of the Champions League. So I mean, Scottish clubs, albeit it's been a while since they beat an English team, but they are pretty competitive in most games that they play. So I just don't get the bias from the English media. They're always running down Scottish teams in the Scottish game. It sucks, but whatever. Kasper Schmeichel, what did he say? He said, heroic, brave and cruel. He told Prime Video Sport, quote, frustration, disappointment. I thought it was a heroic performance, very brave. Football is a cruel game sometimes. That's the emotion at the moment. I was loving every minute. So another 30 would have been amazing. There's just so much disappointment. But in the next few days, when we take a step back and analyse the fact we're away to Bayern and are disappointed in drawing, I think that says a lot when you think of where we started the competition to where we got to. It will stand us in good stead for the future. We've got a lot of young players in there that haven't played at this stage, this level, this kind of pressure. So it's a tough learning curve. But in the long run, it will probably be a good one. End of quote. So again, I agree with Schmeichel. I think that Celtic have improved if you look at how they started. And they started the campaign great with that win against Bratislava. But then, obviously, 7-1 against Dortmund. But you look at the 7-1 performance against Dortmund to how they've competed in the last two games against Bayern Munich. Night and day. Absolute night and day. So this is a Celtic team that I think if they keep this group of players and they can make a couple of additions in the next transfer window, I fully expect them to once again qualify for the playoffs next season in the Champions League, and maybe they can get a slightly easier tie, maybe they can get a slightly easier draw, and maybe they'll get themselves into the last 16. But I do think that probably for the Champions League, I think they need a couple more good players in there, like a couple of 5, 6, 7 million pound players on the bench, and it's hard to get. I get that, players that cost that amount don't really want to be sitting second, further, in the pecking order on the bench. But I just cannot help but think that Celtic bench looked really weak for a Champions League game against Bayern Munich last night. And Brendan Rodgers said he takes immense pride from the performance. So what did he have to say? He said, quote, it's a mixture of pride. Firstly, in the performance level, we have to remember this is Bayern Munich, and everyone talked about that before the game. Performance-wise, we were outstanding, played without any fear, defended so well, with discipline, pressed at the right moments, gave them issues on that side, and able to compact and tight in the right moment. We didn't give away so much. Harry Kane hit the crossbar in the first half, but there weren't too many glaring opportunities for them. We created really good chances. Second half, we have to defend more, but we know the game plan. We get in front, deservedly so. It was just about, could we get the second one? It never looked like we were going to concede the goal that we did, and sadly for us, we did. I can only take immense pride from the performance, and the guys gave everything. End of quote. Right. He has added a little bit more. Look, I think that Rodgers has been fair there with his assessment. The only thing I don't agree with is he said that it never looked like we were going to concede that goal. And I just think that if you're being honest, man, Bayern Munich were all over Celtic in the last 20 minutes. They had some really good opportunities where, Schmeichel was pulling off either big saves or they were just missing the target. So I think Celtic did deserve extra time, but to say that Bayern Munich never looked like they were going to score, I can't agree with that. I think that's wrong for Rodgers. He also went on to add more. He says, quote, "Our European credibility was always going to be important. That's my main takeaway from this campaign. We learned some valuable lessons along the way, played some amazing football, and taken on a club of this size and magnitude, a club where one of their players is more than our budget. It allows us to build. Last year, I felt we developed, even though we never got the points. Performance-wise, I thought it was good. This season it's been very good. We've made the progress that made me want to come back, and now we have to finish the season off strong. My unswerving plan is to make it a seasoned club at this level where we can go and really hurt big opponents like Bayern Munich." End of quote. So I agree with that. I do believe that's why Rodgers came back. I think he believed he had unfinished business in Europe, and I mean domestically the guy had nothing really to prove. He was, he didn't complete the treble, but he started it and he would have completed it anyway. You've got to believe that. So I mean, Celtic went on to do a quadruple treble. I believe that Rodgers probably would have done that as well. I mean, who knows, if Rodgers stayed, then how many trophies would Celtic have won in a row? Maybe they would not have stopped at 12. Maybe they would have done 13, 14, 15. They maybe could have done 5 seasons of trebles. That may have happened. We'll never know. But I don't think Rodgers came back to add a few more Scottish Cups. I think Rodgers came back for this reason, to take Celtic further in Europe, because that was probably the most disappointing thing about his first spell in charge. The fact that they never really had that standout season in Europe, or that really good European performance or result or whatnot. So I think the European reason was why he came back. And finally, he spoke a little about the foul in the build-up to the Davies goal, which I haven't seen back, and I will need to check this out. But Rodgers spoke about the potential foul on Dyson Maeda. He said, quote, "It's a little bit of our inexperience at this level. Upamecano is clever. He picks him up. If he stays down, it's a knock on the head. The referee should have stopped the game. Maybe a more experienced player might have stayed down, and the referee has to stop the game. Eventually, they get the goal. We were disappointed that we didn't get that in the build-up." End of quote. So obviously talking about the fact that maybe a bit inexperienced, but I mean, you can't blame Maeda. You can't say, well, Maeda needs to be more experienced and stay down. I mean, that's not really in Maeda's game. Maeda was trying to get up, I mean, if Maeda stays down and Bayern score, then it makes Maeda look bad. It makes him look bad for being on the ground when your team is desperately trying to hold on for a win. So, Maeda's got up. He's tried to contribute. He's tried to help get his team over the line and defend for the next 45 seconds. So, I don't think it's necessarily inexperience from Dyson Maeda. I think the guy just, would rather get back up and try and help his team defend than stay down. But, I mean, I guess it depends on how you look at it. Should the game have been stopped? I mean, potentially. Not too sure, like I said, didn't see it, but Rodgers seems to think that the referee should have stopped the play. Anyway, guys, look, that is it. We will do a full breakdown of Celtic's Champions League campaign this season when Big Stevie Cool returns. If Big Stevie Cool returns, probably partying over last night's result, but I don't know where he is. Maybe he'll be back soon. That's going to do it, though. Unfortunately, Celtic eliminated from the Champions League, but here, honestly, when they got Bayern Munich, I don't think many people thought they would have only lost 3-2 in aggregate, so they've done themselves really proud, and I'm excited to see how they do next season. And I think they can improve. I think they can go further, especially with this new format in the Champions League. I think this format really will lead to all Scottish clubs actually making at least the playoffs. And I know Hearts didn't make it this year, but they should have. They bottled it. They threw it away. They shat the bed. I mean, you can't win the first 2 and then only pick up 1 point out of the next 12, and that point being against, fucking can't even remember who it was against, but it was against somebody shite. That's my point. So yeah, look, I think we're going to see Scottish clubs have success with this new format, and happy days, because for too long, we've not had that much success in Europe. So yeah, let's make Scotland great again. Let's get the coefficient up. Let's get Scotland thriving at a European level. That's what we want. So, that's it, guys. Catch you in the next one. Until then, Beanfog Football. Thanks for watching. And, yeah, let me know what you think down below of Celtic's Champions League and their campaign and their matches, or double header against Bayern Munich. If you think that they've done themselves proud, you think they should have been through, let me know what you think down below. Till next time though, peace.